Earlier, I spoke to the Scottish Conservatives leader, Douglas Ross.
No one has one reason why drug deaths are increasing in the UK or why we have 3 times more drug deaths in Scotland than other parts of the UK. But it is an issue that I think has to be treated as a public health emergency. It is something that continues to get worse and worse. I don't think there is any safe way to take illegal drugs, but we do have to look at the fact that 10 years ago, when we also didn't have drug consumption booms, the deaths in Scotland from drug-related deaths were far lower. But what we did have 10 years ago was hundreds more rehab beds. And the fact is that since the SNP came to power in 2007, we've seen the number of facilities with drug rehab beds drop from 22 to 3, and the number of beds right across Scotland dropped from 352 to just 70. And we know that the decision taken in 2015 by the SNP to cut ADP funding was highlighted by the Scottish Drugs Forum Chief Executive as a reduction that would have an impact and would have a negative impact, and that was ignored. So we have seen various reasons why the lack of rehab beds and the lack of support has had a direct impact on the number of people sadly losing their lives as a result of drugs.
You've turned this into a political issue because, if you look at it in a UK context, the UK is the second worst in Europe. So it's a UK issue, it's not just a Scottish issue.
No, but we do. I know, John, you don't want this to be a political issue, and neither do I. I want both our governments to work at this, but we can't ignore the fact that, yes, the figures are bad in the United Kingdom, but they're terrible in Scotland. They are absolutely appalling. The number of people who have lost their lives in Scotland in the last year alone is unacceptable. And we can't just simply ignore the fact that the SNP have been in charge for 13 and a half years, that they've overseen a reduction in the number of rehab beds, that they have been the ones that introduced cuts to funding for EDPs right across the country. I don't think it would be responsible for any politician to turn a blind eye to that.
It wouldn't be responsible of any politician either to admit that should it be decriminalised and there were to be safe consumption rooms and it was to be a health issue like it is in Portugal, Scotland would have fewer drugs deaths. You would admit that. Scotland would have fewer drugs deaths.
Well, I don't think the answer to this is simply drug consumption rooms. I think we've got to look at a number of issues. And the fact is we have a huge fall in the number of rehab beds that we know were working, because we can see in the 10 years or more since they've been reduced in Scotland that we've seen an increase in the number of drug deaths. So we have to focus on rehab beds. There's not one silver bullet that's going to solve all this, but we have the powers and the funding and the opportunities right now to increase the number of rehab beds right across Scotland, and we should be doing that.
Can we talk about Brexit? Your party said the deal was oven ready. Liam Fox said it would be the easiest in human history. Michael Gove said, and I'll quote this to you, "The day after we vote to leave, we hold all the cards and we can choose the path we want." 4.5 years later, Douglas Ross, 16 days to go, no deal.
And if you'd quoted me and everything I've said about negotiations with the European Union is that it goes down to the wire. I don't think that's the way it should be. I don't think it gives certainty for individuals or businesses. But I knew when we had the deadline for the end of this year that there would be talks going to the last minute.
So are you blaming the EU? Right. Are you blaming the EU? John, surely if you are, this would have been foreseen in those statements.
No, I think both sides would accept that any negotiations always go down to the wire. You deal with the easy stuff first, but there are always issues that are going to be more difficult to resolve.
Here in Drive Time, we've been having a look at, I think, 14 different economic reports, from HM Treasury to the government, to the Dutch government, to Rabobank. Not one of them says that the UK or Scotland will be better off under Brexit, no matter what the deal is. And you would agree with that, wouldn't you? Scotland will be worse off given Brexit, no matter the deal.
Well, what I've seen is every single financial prediction about Brexit and what will happen is different. There's no one model that comes out and says exactly.
But there's not one that says it's going to be good, is there? There's not one single one.
There's not a single one that says the exact same as another. And what we've heard from the Treasury Select Committee in the previous Parliament and others is a lot of the assumptions and the predictions turn out not to be correct. So we've just got to take on board what these reports say, but they are not a definitive guide to what will happen when the United Kingdom leaves the transition period at the end of this month.
But just to be clear, before we leave this, there's not one of them says that we will be in a better economic position than we would have been had we stayed.
None of the reports you've quoted said that. That's correct.
You're the leader of the official opposition in Scotland. You say the Scottish government's doing a bad job. With the exception of the 2010 general election, the SNP's won every election in Scotland since 2007. So what do you know that the Scottish people don't know?
Well, I think it's right that any government has an opposition that is willing to critique what it's doing. It's not healthy for democracy to simply have people agreeing the whole time. We've got that within the SNP. There's no challenge to Nicola Sturgeon. She can do no wrong. But I think it is right that opposition politicians highlight issues that are concerns. And it is a concern for me that businesses have not had the support during this pandemic from the Scottish Government that they should have got, that jobs have been put under threat because of a lack of urgency in getting support out to businesses who need the funding to get through these difficult times. The fact that people were sent home from hospital were sent to care homes after getting a positive test for COVID in hospital.
Which they were in the whole of the UK, as you know.
These are all issues, John, I think you would expect opposition politicians to highlight. I think it's responsible for opposition parties to look critically at issues that the government are carrying out.
Can we end on COVID? This plan to ease COVID rules over Christmas in the UK is, in quotes, a rash decision that will cost many lives. This is two leading medical journals have just said. The Health Service Journal and the BMJ said people might see the lifting of restrictions as permission to drop their guard. And Michael Gove, we know, is hosting a call with the leaders of the UK nations later. Have you been told by your UK government colleagues what the thinking is?
I'm not going to lie to your listeners that I know any more than you or anyone else, but I think there will be talks ongoing about what it means travelling across the country. But we also have to recognise that people have been looking forward to this, looking forward to the first time in many months joining together as families and celebrating Christmas. It wasn't going to be the same as normal anyway, but we have to react to the evidence that we have in front of us. And if it shows that there are concerning increases across the country and the easing of restrictions would be extremely counterproductive in terms of our efforts to beat this virus, then it's right that they're reviewed and looked at again.
Douglas Ross, thank you.